Hello and welcome back to the NHL Best Bets. Last night there were a few postponements and Philadelphia game at Washington was also postponed. That was one of our picks, but still there were 7 games that were played. Here were our picks from the last night. So heartbreaking loss in LA. San Jose visited there, but LA was leading 3-2 just 1 minute before the end of the game. But then San Jose, without the goalie, pushed some kind of carousel front of the LA goal and scored equalizer, and then win the game shootout 4-3. Tommy, how do you see this game? Naturally, it could go any way or either way, but it seems that these tight games are going now against us every time.
Yeah, great odds for the home team here in a coin flip of a game. It's good that we can bet these draw no bets, that you don't take any stand in these shootouts or the overtime, because we seem to be losing around 8-10 ratio at the moment. Of course, San Jose did outshoot Los Angeles in this game, so they did have maybe a little bit better chances to win. So the equalizer 45 seconds before the end was not completely uncalled for, but still a heartbreaking loss for us and for the LA Kings as well. They could have gotten their victory in the power play, scored a little bit better. They had their chances in overtime and all that. So this time we didn't win, but let's try a better one next time around.
Yeah, that's true. We have everyday time to make this up, and maybe viewers are a bit frustrated that when we do our picks, we never hit those, but still the simulations are performing pretty well, and there has been some questions about what are these simulations. So I'll share now a little bit what kind of numbers we've got from those games last night. So there were 7 games, and all of them have some kind of side value. Out of those 7, 5 were correct. Only the game in LA and then Winnipeg at Calgary were not correct. Good value, especially in Dallas-Chicago game, where Kevin Lankinen was another wall in the Chicago's goal, and they secured another 2-1 overtime victory at Dallas. Then moneyline selections, 4 out of 3 correct, 4 out of 7 correct, so 3 wrong, but odds were quite low here. The big favorites that we predicted to win, they won the games, and that resulted -100 loss at the end. And then total bets, 6 games here with some total value. Half of them were correct, but as the few odds were there juiced, we lost $14. So overall, there were a profitable evening because of the side value, and naturally that is the one bet that we usually make. How do you saw the last night games? Any big surprises?
Not a lot of big surprise. Of course, Tampa Bay beating Nashville that comfortably was a little bit of a surprise. Otherwise, really close games as we predicted. Not so many goals scored this time around, except for in Vegas. Then a little bit of a shooting gallery there with the Vegas and Anaheim. Surprisingly, Anaheim scored 3 goals against Vegas. That was uncalled for, but otherwise very expected round. And like you said, of course, the money line odds with the favorites are usually so low that we aim to look for these big ones. Like now we had plus 142 profit from Chicago beating Dallas. That game went our way after the regulation, so we should have tried that one and trusted our boy Kevin Lankinen. One thing to note as well is the odds for the over-unders, because they are changing a lot and it depends on the game. You can have everything between 5 goals to 6.5 goals, even 7 goals if Toronto and Edmonton are playing. So take a look always those odds and be sure that you get some profits from them, and they are a positive odds for you, because like you see here, it was less than it was negative odds for us in this case. So not that big of a profit, even if we got it right. So 50-50 is not enough. You have to have a little bit better there.
Yep, that is true, and it's always good also to check those latest odds for those side value or the home away bets, which team will have the value at the end, because if it's close, small movements of the odds can swap the value to another side. Tonight there's only 2 games, so it's very easy for us to make our picks. We just follow the machine and select the winners. Here we have 2 games. So Boston goes to Madison Square Garden. New York Rangers have been a bit underperforming team. Boston has started to perform the level that we've seen for the last few years, and they are big favorite on the road by bookmakers, but in our simulations Rangers have some value, so we picked up them as a home underdog with plus 141 odds. And then Toronto travels to Montreal, this Scotia North Division big matchup. Both teams have played well. Montreal is somehow under-simulated. They have overperformed our simulations quite clearly since start of the season, but still Toronto is the favorite here in our simulations. The odds are pretty even, plus 102 what you get for Toronto, but that is our second pick here.
Yeah, so 2 games only tonight, so we follow the machine. In New York, Boston Bruins visiting. Boston's played really tough games, 2 each against Philadelphia and Washington, and now continue to Madison Square Garden with facing the energized New York Rangers, who lost their local game against the New York Islanders 0-2 2 nights ago. So Rangers looking for a bounce back, looking for a proper revenge. Boston maybe a little bit slowing down, not the freshest of teams in any way, quite aging players and all that. Of course, a very good team, but with these odds that we had for the Rangers, this is a no-brainer, so you got to take the home team here, looking for a bounce back and trying to skate over the Boston Bruins in this case. And then one of our favorites, or one of our non-favorites, Montreal Canadiens hosting Toronto. Montreal, like we've said many times, seems to be a little bit overperforming at the time. They did struggle against Ottawa. They lost the first game, won the second one by 1 goal, 1-2, very, very close affairs. And Toronto, on the other hand, has gotten their game together. They beat Vancouver quite comfortably 3 times in a row. The last one a little bit looked like the sort of Tampa Bay-ish effort that they didn't really do much, but then in the end scored the goals they needed to win. So Toronto could be the stumbling block for the Montreal Canadiens this season, and this is a very interesting matchup, not only because of the Canadian teams, but because both teams have been playing really well as of late.
Yeah, very good games. I think especially the Toronto-Montreal, like you said, that could be classic, and as these teams are playing multiple times during the season, they know each other, they hate each other, and they have this kind of rivalry that is also energizing rest of the division for sure.
Yeah, those 2 teams, top 2 teams in the division also, so another one to add to that excitement.
Yeah, and Toronto won the first matchup in opening night, overtime 4-5 in Montreal, so maybe Montreal have some kind of revenge mentality here, but we still trust that high octane offense of Toronto will score needed goals, and Big Dane will stop the pucks that he needs to stop.
Yeah, that's also one good matchup is the goaltenders, 2 great goaltenders. Of course, we've been giving a hard time to Frederik Andersen at times because he's been a bit shaky in Toronto net, but he has improved a lot, and a couple of last games showed that he's a man for his position, and good enough goaltender for Toronto team.
That's exactly true. Then we will take a close review of the season futures, what we've simulated, what we simulate every night, and what we simulated before the season, what kind of changes there has been, and if we start first from the Central Division, there are currently a bit different amount of games played by teams, but Tampa, Florida, Chicago, and Columbus are the 4 teams sitting on the playoff spots. How about our simulations? Before the season, we didn't predict at least Chicago nor Columbus to be there, but how about now?
Yeah, at the moment it's interesting that Chicago has taken the spot in the playoffs, if only barely. There is a really close competition for the 3rd to 5th place. So there is Chicago, Dallas, and Florida. We do not trust Columbus to keep up their current pace, and Nashville is the team that has actually fallen far from the early predictions. Nashville we did have going to the playoffs as 3rd, I think, in this division. Now we do have Tampa and Carolina on top of this division quite clearly, collecting easily over 70 points, while these 3 other teams, Chicago, Dallas, Florida, then challenging for the remaining 2 spots with about 66 points in the simulations so far. So very close game between those 5 teams, but then in the bottom, Detroit quite heavily actually in the bottom. We are not rating them at all. And then Columbus, Nashville will be out of the playoff race at the moment. Of course, a lot of hockey to be played, and the different amount of games also is mixing up the deck a bit.
Yeah, I think Chicago is maybe the biggest surprise so far in the Central Division positively. We predicted them to be, I think, 2nd last, but now they are sitting 3rd, also in the season future predictions 3rd. So let's see how that goes. Then in the East Division, there hasn't been too many changes from our prediction that we did before the season. Boston, Washington, and Philadelphia are the ones that are clearly leading the way there. And then we have still New York Rangers in our top 4 spot. But do you think that will last until end of the season?
I think the simulations do like Rangers a lot because of their offensive prowess that they haven't yet been able to really get all the potential out of there. So they can win a lot of games when they get their game going, but they do need to start doing it now. So still a losing record at the moment, and that's not enough in this tough division. But when you take a look at the other teams, the challengers, the challengers now, Islanders, Penguins, Devils, Sabres, none of them have really impressed. So there is a good chance that Rangers is going to climb from there in the long run, because there is, like I said, a lot of hockey to be played, and Rangers have the potential to be right up there in the playoff race. Interestingly, comparing to our start of the season predictions, Philadelphia Flyers was quite clear favorites to win the division. Now they are only 4th, so Boston has taken their place. On top of it, Boston was one of the biggest favorites by the odds makers. So in this regard, they've done better.
Yep. And when we take a look at the North Division, there Toronto, Winnipeg, and Edmonton have been the ones that we predicted from the beginning of the season. Right now, the Montreal is steering a bit our system there, but are they still out of the top 4, or is there movement that Montreal actually will make a playoffs?
Montreal is climbing a little bit in the simulations, probably due to their great results so far, but they are still out for about 2 points behind Calgary Flames. So not yet impressing the simulation engine, the Canadiens team. Also, we did have Edmonton Oilers on top of this division, not anymore. So now we have Toronto there. A bit surprisingly, Winnipeg still holding the second place. But it's very close. Of course, 7 teams only in this division, so top 4 going to the playoffs. Very, very close fight there. So Canadiens 2 points outside of playoff race at the moment, but it might change really fast if they keep on winning a couple of more games.
Yeah, and then when we continue to the West division, I think that is the one that we have so far predicted pretty accurately. 3 teams leading the way: Colorado, Vegas, and St. Louis. What would be the order between these teams is unknown yet, but then the 4th position was predicted before the season to go to Minnesota. Right now it looks the same way, but Arizona, sitting currently on 4th, has played 1 game more, leads by 1 point, and also San Jose has improved a little bit from the last season. So do you think this is a done deal with these 4 teams?
I think the top 3 teams will be the top 3 teams as we predicted, but like in the preseason predictions, the last place between Minnesota and Arizona. Now, of course, due to a lot of changes in the schedule, there's been a different amount of games played, and in this moment, it is a lot about which teams have they faced, and Arizona's played St. Louis many times. They performed really well, got a lot of points from there, which is surprising, and it wasn't supposed to happen. So we'll see what happens when St. Louis will face Colorado, when they will face Minnesota for their longer playoff series, so to speak. So it's still a little bit in the air, but I do think that these 3 teams, the big ones, Vegas, Colorado, Blues, will keep their places, but Arizona might push to the playoffs because Minnesota has been a little bit shaky. As we were predicting before the season, they were not that clear in the 4th place. So that is a fight that we are looking for in the Western Division. And then San Jose, who knows if they find their stride after last season's disaster, they could still put on a challenge, but Ducks and Kings seem to be completely out of it, less than 50 points in the rest of the season simulations.
Yeah, and for the San Jose, it would be quite interesting case because so far they have played only road games, and I think there will be few more of those, but still, when they start to play at home, they have quite a few home games for sure, and that is something that it's maybe a bit difficult to simulate this year, that what kind of home advantage there actually is if there are no any spectators, but at least you don't need to be on the road all the time, so it gives you some kind of hope for better.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how they start their homestand, because it's going to be a long one. So if they do really well, that's of course something that they can build upon. But then if they struggle, they don't get away, so you can't leave home. So that might also turn against them. So in a way, the hockey players and the teams are used to traveling. They're used to having a couple of home games, then going on the road. So there is some sort of rhythm in it. But when you are, of course, now the San Jose is on the road for a long time, so it's also a bit different. And in these times, they probably go back and forth a lot. But let's see how it goes. But it's an interesting small tidbit again, how this is going to affect the teams, and especially other teams than San Jose when they need to visit San Jose for 4 games or 5 games in a row.
That's true, and like I said, only 2 games tonight. We'll take a closer look of both and see if Rangers and Toronto will come victoriously.
Yeah, let's hope we turn our fortunes tonight.